Okay. Should be live. See if we can get this working. Okay. I have technically launched this. There it goes. Hey, all right. Looks like everything is working now. Let me type a welcome message here. Feel free to say hello and ask any questions you have. There we go. Okay. We are up and running. By all means, please let me know if things are bad in any way, shape, or form. Too loud, too quiet, too boring, too stupid. I don't know, whatever. Any comments you have, as long as you're not being a complete dick about it, I am open to hearing what you have to say. Okay, so this is, if you are not familiar with it, the AbletonLive digital audio workstation. This is the Suite edition, which means that it comes with a bunch of built-in synthesizers and a ton of built-in audio effects. It's basically Ableton's complete package. Theoretically, it is everything you would need to produce music without needing anything else other than maybe a MIDI keyboard, a computer to run it on, and some speakers or headphones to hear it. Maybe an audio interface depending on your computer. I mean, probably you have an audio interface, but it's not, I don't know that it's strictly necessary if you have a powerful enough computer. But the point is, like, this program in this version is designed with the idea that you can produce music entirely within it, needing nothing else other than an ability to run it and hear it. And obviously control it, which you could even actually can do all the controls with the keyboard if that's your jam. It's just not a very intuitive way to make music. So I highly recommend a keyboard or a pad controller of some kind. Real quick, just so you know what you're looking at, on the off chance that you are not familiar with this program, this is what is called Ableton Live Session View. These empty boxes here, these cells that look kind of like the cells in a spreadsheet, represent clips. They can be audio clips or MIDI clips. If you double click on one, you get this is a MIDI channel here. And I put an operator synth, that's why it says operator. I put an operator synth, that's what we're looking at today. I'll get to that in just a second. I put an operator synth on that channel, and so that's why it says operator. And this one says MIDI because there's nothing on that channel. And these are two audio channels. We're just going to mess with these MIDI channels for today. Double click on one of these cells and you will create a blank clip that is 1 bar long. And then you can use that to, you put in a sequence of some sort. Like a little C minor arpeggio, for example. And so now you have like a little arpeggio, and play the clip. Ta-da! And we'll use this to some degree while we are programming to get some sequences. We can tweak controls on things while they are playing. So now we have a little sequence, and we can go in and we can add more clips if we need them later. And let's look at operator itself. Now I hope that this is big enough that y'all can see what's going on here. I know some of these synthesizers can be expanded up into to take up more space over here, like the wavetable one I think does, and some of the other ones. I don't know if this one does. If you know that it does and you can tell me how to do it, then by all means, You can make it a little smaller here and hide some of this central panel, but hopefully you can see what's going on your screen. And by all means, though, do let me know if you can't see, so I can try and figure something else out. If nothing else, for future streams. No reason to streaming this if half my audience can't even see what the heck's going on. Yeah, so like I said, and this also, I should also just show you real quick. This is the arrangement view in Ableton Live, and this is a little more what you are maybe used to thinking of digital audio workstation layout and view. For these audio, so for the MIDI tracks, you would typically have you'd see MIDI clips here, and you can drag those over to the timeline. There you go, and now that's in the time, and so that's that same MIDI clip looped basically 40 sometimes or whatever over here, in case you want to use the arrangement view. This is definitely the more traditional view, and audio clips here would go in these. They can exist side by side, whatever. It's a very powerful program. This isn't really about Ableton specifically, so I'm not going to go into super much detail, but just so you know what you're looking at. Tab to switch between the views, operator, and so yeah, here's operator here. It's in the lower left-hand corner. The very far left is the info view. This is it's a little tutorial, if you will. It just explains what the thing is pointing at. It's like tooltips. Default sound here in operator is just this one sine wave oscillator playing with essentially an organ envelope with a little bit of release, a 400 millisecond release time, and a little bit of velocity, 50% velocity. You can see that here. And so this is a 4-operator synth. Each of these bars right here represents one of the oscillator's core controls. And as you can see, it switches over here. So for each one, so right now we're on operator A. In this middle view here, you have the controls, specific settings and controls for the rest of the operator A stuff. So here you have its coarse and fine tuning. If you're familiar with FM synths, you'll understand why this goes 1 to 48, and this one goes up to 1,000. Yeah, fine sets of ratio and fractions of whole numbers. Yeah, so this lets you get between the whole numbers, and this goes down to half, by the way. Which these are, I suppose I should explain in case you aren't familiar. The coarse tuning is, so 1 is a 1-to-1 ratio for all these. So 1, that just means these all share the same pitch. If I set this one to 2, now this operator is an octave higher than all these other ones, just because it's twice as high, right? That's the ratio of 2 to 1. That's 1 octave up. If I set it to 4, it's 2 octaves up. Okay, and if I set it to 3, it's 1.5 octaves up. It's three times the pitch, 5 times the pitch, 6, whatever the number is here. It's just a multiplier of the pitch. So it's a ratio. And yep. So 4 operators. Right. Okay. So each operator here. Go to the first one here. You have envelope view and oscillator view. And you can access these at the same time, but if in terms of, you can change the settings on them without having to, regardless of which one is clicked, but the click just determines what's being displayed. So for envelope, it displays the envelope shape, which makes sense, right? It's a standard ADSR envelope. It can do some different things, like start off at a non-zero level. You don't have to go all the way up. Your sustain can be higher than your attack. So it's not quite up to the level of the DX7 time level envelopes, but they're a little more, they're not just the basic ADSRs. As with any envelope, it could probably be, you could have more points of control, it can have additional stages, steps, whatever, but it could also be simpler. I mean, whatever. It seems like they're pretty capable envelopes. You've also got key tracking built in, so you can have the envelope change based on where it is, on the keyboard. Oscillators level, yeah, okay. So lower ones go higher, higher ones go higher, depending on if this is a negative setting or a positive setting. You can loop the envelopes, some different settings in there. You set the peak of the envelope. It's currently set to 0, but you can make it below 0. You can make it above 0, whatever. 0 being unity gain. And then over here you have your kind of basic the remainder of your synth parameters. You have an LFO, and it looks like just one, which is relatively limited, but the way that Ableton is built, like, you can get around that. If you need 5 LFOs, there's a way to make that happen. You got a filter, so this is a hybrid synth technically. It's FM, but it does have some subtractive elements. You got a pitch envelope and some other pitch controls here. Turns it on and off. Spread is spreads out, detunes voices per note, gives you a chorusing effect essentially. This is universal transposition. This allows you to affect all your envelopes together, this time knob. So presumably you will program your sound so that your envelopes make sense together, like they have a relationship. Maybe one opens a little faster than another, one opens a little slower, whatever. So this maintains the relationships, but affects them all equally, like makes them all longer or shorter depending on which direction you go, but maintaining the relationships between as you've programmed them between them. Tone lets you turn down the high end so you can get aliasing effects out, because aliasing effects in FM can be a problematic thing. And this is overall volume for the instrument. Okay, and then over here on this side's controls, you have coarse, fine, fixed. Fixed to let you set it like just to a set hertz, and this just lets you do some magic with it. There's some reasons why you would want to use fixed ones, fixed pitch oscillators in FM, but it's not something we have to go super in depth in, other than you just know that it can do it. You can have a fixed pitch oscillator, and it's no problem. You just click a button. Takt, decay, release, time to velocity, velocity to loudness, key tracking to loudness, and then the oscillator section over here. Click this. So this is kind of an interesting display. Here you have, these are partials, and so you can essentially just like draw your own waveform based on the partials, and then it'll display that down here. And it says, hey, okay, that's a user wave. Or you can select, okay, so sine wave. If you know anything about music theory, sound theory, this will make sense to you. Sine wave, you just have the fundamental. It's the first partial at full volume. And then you can go to saw 3. So this is a saw made of 3 partials. Doesn't sound much like a saw wave, does it? Okay. And it just has, that's just the first 3 partials here. Let's just jump to saw 8. Still doesn't sound all that much like a saw to me. Let's go to saw 64. Still, I don't. Oh, was I in the wrong? I see what's going on. I'm. Okay, so if it's not completely obvious, I'm figuring this out with you. There we go. I was on the wrong oscillator. My bad. Okay, so we are on the A oscillator. So there's saw 3. That's a saw with 3 partials. And saw 8. It's recognizably a saw wave, even though it's missing a bunch of partials. And if we jump all the way to saw 64, And then this is saw D. I assume that's a detuned. Maybe it's saw. I assumed. Slight derivations of some ways. Anyway, yep. And you can also, in addition to the built-in waves, like I said, you can also make a waveform with some weird harmonic qualities. So kind of a glassy tone with some weird complexities. But yeah, it's just a different way to make waveforms. So you can do kind of fun to see what different waveforms look like when they're expressed as a set of partials. So triangle wave. It's pretty illustrative. If you look at a square wave, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let's look at it. It's very similar. You see, it's a very similar wave. It's also just the odd partials, but they are steeper, or not quite as steep. I'm sorry, it's not as steep of a slope. Here, these partials drop off very quickly. A much more muted tone. Yeah, Swarm. So I've been enjoying doing pigments, obviously, and there's tons more depth to it. By the way, welcome. Thanks for joining, Swarm. But I thought it would be good to, both for variety's sake, maybe attracting a slightly different audience. Not everyone has pigments, for example, or has an interest in it. So I thought maybe by doing some AbeltonLive stuff, I could attract some different audience, also maybe explore some different things. And part of it is, I want to learn Operator. I want to learn all the internal synths, and I've barely touched them. So this gives me a reason and an excuse and a task to actually make that happen. Yeah, so if we just go back to the sign, and then, yeah, so LFO section here, filter section here, and then this is sort of a global control, which includes the algorithms. That's the last thing that's probably worth talking about. And if you click on the algorithm section, you also have, this is your mod matrix here, and some more global controls for voices, retrigger, just, again, some sort of global interpolation, anti-aliasing, panning, pan, and key. And so a lot of these, like, you might turn off interpolation and anti-aliasing, for example, if you're want to save some CPU cycles, if your computer is not quite up to the task. This is, the computer I'm running this on is a stock Mac Mini from last year. So it's a 2024 stock Mac Mini. It is 8 gigabytes of RAM and a 256 megabyte SSD built in. And now I've added an external 1,000 or 1 terabyte SSD, and also a I guess another, it's an internal one, but it's in a docking station that my Mac Mini sits on top of. It's a Satichi or Satichi. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. My Japanese is abysmal. And I'm not even 100% sure it's Japanese. I guess it could be Korean. Hub that one of the drives lives inside of. So it's kind of an internal drive, but it's not actually. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. So the point being, this is not a super powerful, high-end, super spec machine. This is a literal stock machine with nothing added but a little bit of storage space. So, yeah, right. So I agree that every DAW has so much stuff built in that you lose a lot by not learning it. That is exactly my thought process for wanting to dive into this a little deeper. I am strongly committed to not buying any more synthesizers, software or hardware. Last year I bought two. I bought the Dream Synth, which I've done a stream on, and I bought the Op6 rather, native plugin because I love the Op6 so much, and I'll probably do a stream on that at some point too, either the actual hardware or the plugin, or maybe both. And it was $50. Both of those plugins, it's probably worth noting, were the Dream Synth. I think I paid $40 for in a bundle that came with a bunch of other stuff. Although admittedly, I was really mostly interested in Dream Synth and their plugin emulation of the Space Echo. And then the Op6 plugin was $50, which was another like I basically it just was hard for me to resist. And it's, if you're not putting external effects on your hardware synths, modern hardware synths, it is definitely nice to have them plugin form, because it's just a lot easier to run them as a plugin. So the Op6, I'm keeping the hardware even though I have the software because I like the programming interface on it, and I intend to program my sounds on it and then transfer them to the original or whatever. And plus, if I ever play out live, it'll be nice to have Op6 hardware. Anyway, yes, but yeah, the built-in stuff. So I have those two synths that I bought last year. They were both like essentially just small indulgences of things that I knew I didn't need. Dream Synth, for example, is a very sweet synth, but I don't know how much I'll use it just because I love Pigments so much, and I just feel at home in Pigments. And when I sit down in front of Pigments, I really feel like I connect with what it's doing, and I just have fun. And I enjoy Dream Synth, but I don't know. I'm always having fun when I'm trying to program it. So, but yeah, I want to learn the Ableton built-in synths as much because they're super deep, despite looking a lot of the times like a spreadsheet, and B, they're super small. They're what's the word? They're not processor intensive for the most part. They're pretty processor unintensive. Now, and Swarm, you mentioned Logic. I assume that means that's your main DAW. I've actually, since I became a Mac guy when I bought this Mac, I have considered switching to Logic, and it might be something I would try out in the future. Not least because it's $200, and I don't know if upgrades are free or not. I haven't looked into it yet, but they are not free in Ableton, and they tend to be about 200 plus to 200 or more than that, even $300 per upgrade. I can't remember what I paid for this upgrade to Suite 11. I had Standard 10, and I went to Suite 11, and it was an expensive upgrade. I want to say it was like $300 or $400, maybe even more, $500. I don't remember. It was like 5 years ago. And then I foolishly switched to a DAWless setup right after that. And so I didn't use this for 2 years. So I have not upgraded to 12. This is still Live 11. Sorry, this is a lot of rambling. I hope I haven't chased anyone off. Anyway, let's get back to Operator. So Operator is a 4-operator FM synth. The name Operator sort of tips you off to the fact that it's FM, if you're familiar with that terminology. Now, if you are not familiar with FM somehow, if this is your first introduction, I won't go super deep into it, but an operator in FM speak is a combination of, if you have only ever used analog or VA or subtractive synth, an operator is an oscillator, an envelope, and an amp, essentially, all packaged into one. And so that's why each of these operators, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, each of these represents an operator. Each of these operators is, switch that back to sign. Each of these operators is an individual package of, so here's the amp part, right? Here's the envelope, and here's the oscillator. And so you got 4 of these bad boys, and then additional controls over here. Each operator can either, you can either have it outputting, so you can hear it. So right now only one of those is Can you hear? That's this last sine wave. Or modulating another oscillator. And that's what this right here, you see these 1, 2, 3, 4 in a line, right? And the yellow one's at the bottom and the orange one's at the top, just like it is here. So the ones at the bottom are the only ones you can hear. So in this case, the only one you can hear is the yellow one, and then the other three are modulating it. And if you, I'll get to this in a second and show you what that means, but or how that works. But right now, all you're hearing is a single sine wave. And if we switch to this one, you're hearing 4 sine waves, except the 3 of them are turned down. So I can turn them up. And now these are all tuned to the same pitch, so this should just get louder. Yeah, it's just marginally louder, right? But if we start doing the fine tuning, now you can hear 4 oscillators detuned from each other, right? Okay. Let's go ahead and switch back to, for now, to this one, just while we kind of explore the basis of FM a little bit. Yeah, Swarm. So based on what you're saying, that's actually the same draw for me to get Logic. If I was just starting with music when I bought this Mac, I 100% would have went with Logic. My understanding is definitely that these days, both my understanding from my own experience and my understanding talking to other musicians, whether they've worked in 1 DAW or 10 DAWs, is that all the DAWs are perfectly capable. DAW, Digital Audio Workstation, DAW, right? All the DAWs are perfectly capable of getting the job done. And it's really just a matter of which ones you click or vibe with. And I only have deep experience in Ableton or AbeltonLive. I've also used, in the modern era, I've tried Reaper twice. I've tried some older versions of Reason, but nothing particularly recent. I think the newest version I ever tried was like 3. So, and they're like 11 or 12 now. So I'm a little out of date on that. It's probably not even fair for me to say I've tried that one. Reaper, this, and I want to say it's someone's working with other people once or twice. I've laid hands on a couple other things. And then if you include the MPC as a DAW, then I've also got some reasonable amount of experience with it. I've never used the software, the desktop version of the software, but I have produced entire albums inside the MPC, and it's really a DAW in a box. So, those are the ones that I am most familiar with. But yeah, if I had not already had years invested into Ableton when I got this Mac last year, I just would have bought Logic because it is fully capable and it's $200. So why would I not just get that? Like I said, I think this version of Live, if you bought it new today, I think it's $750 or $800, which seems outrageous in a sense, but it's also like, I mean, you do get 1, 2, 3, 4, something like 7 or 8 synthesizers, including a wavetable, an FM, a couple of different VA models, 2 different samplers, a physical modeling thing, plus dozens of audio effects. I mean, you get everything you need to play, but it's not $300. It's not $300 that Logic is. But yeah, so I started with Ableton because my production partner back in the day used it, and he just introduced me to it and taught me how to use it. And it is a bit of a learning curve at first, for sure. The more you use it, you can hear how different this sound is now that I've turned all these up to from 0 or 2-0 rather. But yeah, so when I got back into making music in 2020 or whatever, since this is what I had been using, I just went ahead and got it. And at the time, the money was actually not that big of a deal to me. If I was doing it today, I just wouldn't be able to buy it, and that's why I'm still a version back, is because I don't have the $300 or whatever it is for the upgrade, even though there are some sweet new features in Ableton 12. Maybe after I release the new album, if it sells really well, I can afford to upgrade. But okay, enough about that. Let's get into the programming. Yeah, right. And before I went ahead and bought Ableton, that's essentially the boat I was into. I was like using Audacity, and which is very primitive, especially for multi-tracking. There's no like sync, there's no MIDI, um, and at the time I was doing a lot of music concrete and like essentially noise stuff, so it was fine. But it was frustrating enough that I was like, oh, you know what? It's maybe I should go ahead and, if I'm going to try and do this semi-seriously, I should go ahead and spend the money and get Ableton. Buddy taught me how to use it a couple years ago. I more or less remember, and he'll help me. That's the other thing too, is I had a resource of someone to talk to whenever I got stuck on something. But okay, so let's design some sounds with FM. So if you are new to FM, it can be very intimidating, even in I do think that this sense layout, like you look at this and you're like, wow, okay, there's not that much there, right? Like I bet I can figure this out. I'm not an idiot. And you're not an idiot. I'm sure of that. But you can, hopefully this makes FM a little less intimidating for some folks. But okay, so when it comes to algorithms, can be one of the most confusing things about FM. In part because, okay, so this default algorithm, you only actually hear one oscillator, the last oscillator, and every other oscillator is modifying in a chain that oscillator. So this oscillator is playing a sine tone, right? This is the top one, the orange one, D. This is right here, the very top. Just like this is nice and simple because this is the actual configuration they're in. So this one will modify this sine wave, will modify this sine wave, producing a complex wave. And then that complex wave, so the wave that's created by the modification of this by this, will modify this, producing a yet more complex wave. And then that one will modify this. And you can vary these in the time domain. So for example, that maybe this one only comes in for a blip for the attack, for example. And then this one is, sort of varies over time. It starts off fairly complex, but drops off relatively fast. Let's say for the sake of argument, we're making a piano style sound. Okay, so the main body tone. This is just a carrier, so don't worry about this. The main body tone. You're gonna want to, like this envelope will produce that. So so it's like it gets the attack. Nice and fast. It drops off a little bit and then stays relatively steady, but kind of slowly drops from there. Or it's not a real piano; it's piano style tone. So we'll just say it drops down to a midpoint and just sustains there. It stays there as long as you like. Okay. And so for this envelope, this is fine. Maybe that's actually fine, right? So it decays over the course of a second to the sustain level. And then this envelope, we'll say it decays. We'll give it that same, roughly a second to decay. This one's going to match that one. And this just kind of gives us our main. Maybe decays a little quicker. Oops, a little quicker. There we go. Main tone. Okay. And then this is going to have some. It's going to sustain a bit, but it's going to drop off a little faster. And then this is just going to be just a click at the beginning. Let's see if we can get into this one. 638. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. I mean, there's an example of, how this sort of stack works. But you have to keep in mind that anytime they're stacked on top of each other, that each one is modified by the one behind it, to, as much as that envelope allows it to. So you're never going to get a pure sine tone in this one, okay, unless these two aren't doing jack shit. If these two are not sounding, then this will be a sine tone. If these two are doing anything at all, even a little bit, then this will be a more complex waveform that's modifying your first one. Okay, and so in some ways, this is the easiest to understand. If this one modifies this one, modifies this one, modifies that, and that's what you hear. But when you're first learning, there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I think this is sort of the standard set of configurations for a 4-op FM synth. I learned all this on a Yamaha TX81Z, which is essentially a very similar but much more limited synth than this 4-op or operator synth. But it's different enough, and it was long enough ago that I had it. Some of the comparisons probably. I don't know for sure that these are the same algorithms. That's what I'm trying to spit out. So don't hold me to that. But I think it's either the same set or a very similar set of algorithms. And we can go through them all. So this one is these two independently modify this one, which then modifies this. So you get a little more control, in terms of this middle oscillator. Here, these two are set in a stack, which modifies this one, and then this one over here would modify it individually. Lots of different use cases. We don't need to go through all these. The most useful one when you're first starting, I think, is this one. 2 stacks of 2. And this essentially gives you a 2-oscillator subtractive style synth, because with a simple stack of 2 operators, you can make pretty much any basic waveform that you would, or waveforms of similar complexity at least. I don't know that you can create directly every basic waveform. I don't know what the mix is to get a triangle wave, for example, out of FMing 2 sine waves. It's probably possible. I don't know right off the top of my head what it is. I do know that you can essentially get. Okay, so what I've done there, I just muted the C one, which is this one here. So right now we're just going to hear one stack. So I can show you. Okay, so these envelopes are essentially the same. Decay is a little longer on this number 1, but they decay to the same level, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, it will sustain at minus 17 dB. So I guess it takes a little longer to get there on this one. We can just make it the same, actually. Okay, close enough, right? So as you get I'm sorry. With the 2 oscillator stack, ratios both set 1 to 1. And the modulating operator is set to like something like 60-70%. And then you turn the feedback up around 50-ish. And essentially what you get there is a sawtooth wave. And it's really just a point of reference. especially when you have all these other synthesizers here, you don't really necessarily need to synthesize a sawtooth wave. It's just good to have that as a point of reference. And then as you kind of screw around more with these, oops, so I'm not going to change the let's change the ratio of the second one to something like 3. And now you can see we're closer to something like a square wave. A bright square wave that's maybe skewed a little towards the high end. And it's a little raspier, I guess, than a square wave would be too. Let's see if we can turn the feedback down a little bit. But the point being, if you experiment with these 2 oscillator stacks a lot, you can really get a good sense of what's happening when you are modulating one sine wave oscillator with another. And of course, these can also use all these other waveforms, anything up to and including crazy user waveforms where you're defining all the partials, and you can really go nuts on that stuff. You know, you don't have to get super fancy with it, but you can. Okay, see as it goes higher, as the ratio goes higher and higher, get more glassy digital sounds. And if you start screwing with the fine tuning, you can get into the inharmonic tones. It starts to get sound metallic or bell-like sometimes. Getting into some aliasing there too, as we really get. Let's try and get like. There we go. So now you can really hear some of that inharmonicity. You get some nice metallic tones. I can add, yes, for sure. Sorry, I just glanced down at the thing. Let's see. So audio effects, utilities. So we have a spectrum. Don't think there's an actual oscilloscope. I'm sure there's an oscilloscope plugin for this. I think the spectrum would do. So I know it's not quite the same thing, but at least it does allow you to look at the spectrum here. Again, I'm sure there is an actual oscilloscope plugin for Ableton, but it's not among their built-in set of built-in set of tools, at least. Yeah. Yeah, there is a search bar at the top of the list. I'm pretty sure there's no oscilloscope in here. Yeah, no oscilloscope. No oscilloscope. I figured I would have come across it by now if there was. Spectrum, I think, is, like I said, is as good as we get with the built-in tools. But I'll try and remember. Maybe if I can find a super simple and free oscilloscope plugin, I will grab one for future streams to just so you can kind of see what's going on with it. But yeah, as you see, if you watch the spectrum as we sort of move the, so I'm just moving. So right now, that's a 1-to-1 ratio with this fine tuning. So it's probably more like 1.7. It's 695 over here. So it's like a 1.695 to 1 ratio. We can even, let's just turn that down for now so you can just sort of see, watch the, this is 2. That's half. Okay, so 1. You both hear it with your ears and kind of see where the spectrum, and that's certainly not an actual saw, but it's, it's not miles away from it either. 2. You can hear that it's higher emphasis, and you can also see there's a bigger space here between the fundamental and the first harmonic. Jump to 5. Now you can really hear the difference, and you can see that there's, again, the space between the first and these later harmonics. And these kind of tools can definitely help you. Again, now we can add some fine tuning in. Yeah, I'm sure there's a free oscilloscope plugin. I have zero doubt of it. It's probably even somewhat famous. I just I haven't looked into it because I just really haven't needed it. I don't really use them when I'm programming myself. I just thought it can be useful for this, but yeah, I'm just getting started in the streaming, so we're all learning together. But I would definitely be willing to add one so that y'all can kind of see a little better what's going on. All right, so now if we so right now we just have that envelope going. And we're getting a little attack there because, so you can see how this would be useful making drums. And so right now we're just hearing the other 2 operator stack. And in that case, this one is just and you can make these less velocity sensitive or more velocity sensitive. Yeah, I mean, the spectrum's nice because, especially with FM, I think because you can, like, it's cool to see the waveforms that are created for sure. Like, that is just cool. I mean, there's no other way about it. And if you use a lot of, somewhat complex waveforms in your synth programming, I think it can be useful. Spectrum is, from a purely, maybe scientific is not the right word, but, observational standpoint is probably actually more useful because you can actually see the harmonic bands, how they shift as the ratios shift, move up, and as you turn the level up, how they become more complex. It's a little bit here, and you just see those bands increase as I turn up the volume. It's kind of neat. And that is one of the advantage of using these DAW tools, using, like versus a hardware synth even. It's not many hardware synths that have a spectrum analyzer built in. All right. So do we want to suggest some? Oh, hell yeah. I loved graphic EQs with the crazy lighting that they had. My parents were not hi-fi people, but whenever I went over to someone's house that had like a fancy stereo, I would sit in front of their stereo and just watch the graphic EQ and the displays on some of those things myself. I'm 100% with you. I guess it was, even though my parents are not super into music, I think anyone watching me as a kid would have been not surprised to find out what a music nerd I became. I got almost like a xylophone thing going here. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Filter sweeps with the graphic EQ, where you sort of grab the top half of the thing and go, and push it all down, and your hand even sort of like does the roll off because of just the way it works on the sliders. 100%. Yes. Um, yeah, I used to like to play with those again when I, was at someone's house that would let me, which was not very often, or someone's parents weren't supervising us. I would definitely play with those things and try and like make tape recordings of them and stuff. That is the kind of nerd that I was, for sure. Okay, so we're on 1. Let me turn. I think turn the sustain of these down. Sustain down. And this also does have a filter with its own envelope, so you can do filtery stuff with it if you want to do that. You can do, you can turn the resonance way up. Actually, probably turn this way down. There you can hear the filter. Yeah, I am down to do specifically not bells. Not bell can I make? Yep, I'm definitely down to do that. How about? Do I get to use the filter and stuff too? Because that'll definitely help. But I might actually kind of save this as a. This is something it might be worth working on later. Let me go up here. So there might be another way to, do this, but the best way I found to get the default patch is to just go over here and double click operator, and it inserts a clean copy of operator. All right, so we're going to make not bell, and probably not later bass either, or lately bass, since that's like another super duper extra famous FM sound. So if we want to do not bells, we're going to stick with purely, we're not going to touch the fine at all. We are just going to do the course settings, basically. And let's try. Okay. How about use that envelope for that one? Use. So the second envelope is going to take most of a second to get to the top, then a relatively half second to drop down to minus 7 dB, minus 6.9 dB is close enough, whatever. And then this one we will make like a second and a half. And it'll drop down to, yeah, let's say like 29, 31 dB over the course of another second and a half. And then the last one we will make like over, oh, let's see, I think I might have done these in reverse order. I think I need to make them, okay, so no, that's, no. I think I was right before. So what I'm thinking is like, since each of these are modifying the one in front of them in turn, so this one comes, yep, right, because you got to be able, in order to hear this. Okay, I think this will work. Let's just see what it sounds like here in a second. Instead of listening to me talk to myself and not even be sure what the fuck I'm doing here. Sound design is a process of discovery, always. So, yeah, I keep that in mind. Let's try and get these. So I rarely know. I mean, even when I'm going for something, like here we're trying to make like a filter sweep kind of sound. Turn some of this velocity sensitivity down. You know what? I'm actually going to turn it off to begin with. Well, you can add it back in. I just want to like kind of work on the bass timbre here, and then we can screw around with some performance controls. It totally makes sense for them to have these on, but I don't want anything. I don't want to have to remember that I have to hit the motherfucking key super hard in order to get the. Okay, so right, so I want these to be lower. This is 1.5 seconds. It's down to okay. We just need a super long decay on this, I think is what we need. And pretty long decay on this, and then less long decay on this. There we go. So one of my favorite things to do with FM is sweeps. I love filter sweeps and sweeps of all kinds. And so I like making sweeps in FM. And we can mess with the ratios of these. You really get some interesting sweeps where like things are going. And again, since this has a filter envelope built in, we can also add even more sweep on top. Actually, we probably want to get this open pretty quick and then close it. And you can really get into some very, some crazy harsh sounds for one thing. And then we can. Okay, so let's do volume on this one 50%, because that is just our output. And that gives us some dynamics. And then volume on this one is like 37. Volume on this one is like 23. And the volume on this one's like 17. And actually, I think we should probably filter this a little more at this point because it's pretty harsh sounding. Now, yeah, that's a very... the filter is doing a little bit of work, obviously, but this is the kind of sound that I was programming on my Yamaha TX81Z back in the day. And this filter also there's additional filter settings here. You can add a shaper to it, which is distortion drive, basically. You can set how much drive. You can set velocity, frequency to velocity, frequency to key tracking is set to 100%. So. And yeah, all the settings for the envelope over here. And then the other thing that we can add LFO if we wanted an LFO. Yep. LFO's destination. Yeah, okay, here we go. So you can set the LFO to the filter. You can hear it there going whoa, 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 whoa. Get some fun effects in there. And then let's see, where do we get to this? There it is. Okay, so here we can do mod wheel to LFO amount 100%. And the rate is set to what? 100%. Trigger low. Okay, 50 seconds to 30 hertz. Set to 100, which is whatever it is there. Yeah, so, and yeah, I love kind of classic FM, no filters, everything just raw dogging it out there, but it is nice to have the filter as a the filter there as a final tone shaping tool. That's what I'm trying to spit out. Get some spread if you want to do that. I don't really think it's necessary, but so. And obviously we can fine tune this. Excuse me. Yeah. Um, no, when I was using my Yamaha TX-A1Z, which is the equivalent basically of a sound blaster, it's the 8 operator with it was like their second generation FM chip, the one where they introduced a few different waveforms. I think it had 8 different waveforms, most of which were just like it was a half rectified saw, full rectified saw, a pinched, not saw, a sine. So half rectified sine, full rectified sine, regular sine, like 2 pinched sines, one of which was rectified, like half rectified, one of which was not. Um, some stuff like that. It was not much of a selection of waveforms, and here you have not only a bunch of different saws and sines and a triangle, but also a couple different noise and all those user definable ones. Um, and then you also have filter and LFO, and like I think the old one also only had one LFO, and I think you can again you could with Ableton you can drop this into an instrument rack, for example, and do all kinds of crazy shit with it too, and really expand its capabilities. So, um, yeah, but when I was using the old TX-A1Z as my FM of choice, weapon of choice, I programmed like maybe a dozen or 15 sounds on it manually, um, using like the interface. Probably not even that. It might have only been like 6 or 10. Like in the first 8 months that I had it, it was a real bear to figure out. But then I got software editor for it and made another half dozen before I discovered the random function in the software editor, where I could just basically come up with random configurations of the 4 operators and whatever until I just hit random until you get an end string toned, and then when you get an end string tone, then you can go in and modify all the envelopes and whatever. And so that's how I made most of my sounds on it. I just hit random until something interesting came out of the end. It's pretty good in those lower octaves. Well, that sounds really good. It's almost getting into like dubstep growl bass, which a lot of those are made, of course, by FM, although I think a lot of times they're FMing a wavetable, which you can't do in here. Not in this one anyway. I think you can do it in wavetable to some degree, but not in operator. But yeah, I'm going to save this as FM sweep. And we can go back to instruments and back. Yeah, there was no extra drive on that. We could actually load it back up if you want and even add some drive to it. User library. Bring that over here. And click on the filter. Okay, no drive. Shaper drive. Turn it up to... Oh, it's shaper's off. I'm like, that doesn't seem to be doing much. There it is with a bunch of drive. Try the hard shaper. There you go. That's just straight up sawing it off into a saw or a square wave, I think. Sine shaper. That's nice. That adds the least fairly mellow distortion, I think. Yeah, so a lot of those old Resonor tones were absolutely created on FM synths, or on like the FMing his access virus and shit like that. But yeah, FM is, it's not really, it would probably be, I think I like the sine wave, just a real little bit of the sine wave drive on there. I like it. Okay. Yeah, as I was saying, oops, look at that. Delete this one. Move to trash. Trash. We'll just keep this one. Rename. Because I don't think we need to keep the original one. I think the drive one's better. Another neat thing you can do with Ableton too is, yeah, right, is put this inside an instrument rack and do all kinds of, build in effects to it, add macro controls, all kinds of shit like that. And that's probably beyond the scope of this stream, but I will definitely do a stream in the future where I build some Ableton racks and show what kind of stuff can be done with that. But yeah, right. So Reznor was getting a lot of these FM tones, and not just Reznor either. Skinny Puppy, name a famous FM industrial, or actually for that matter, IDM artist, and it's very, very likely that some of their characteristic signature tones, if you will, came from FM synths one way or another. That goes for Otecker, definitely goes for Aphex Twin, and even acts like the Orb, Orbital. Those guys all had FM synths in their rigs too. It's kind of a different set of tonalities for sure, but FM synth it's more than just bells, as you mentioned. And bells are definitely one of the easiest things to get out of FM, but far from the only thing. Wow, it seems like our FM sweep, we chased everyone out. There was 5 people in here at one point, and now it's just me and you. But yeah, anyway. I don't know if you have any suggestions for other sounds that we can do. Let's go ahead and go to this 2 operator stack again, because I just think it's a good one to start with. Actually, I guess we don't have to turn that one. Get some nice woody tones there too. And you can see, try. You can see when you switch from a sine wave modulator to a more complex modulator, you get considerably different effects, which again, this is sort of it's illustrative of when you're using the taller stacks, 3-4 operators in a row. So if we know we can get a saw wave by, okay, here, hold on a second. Let's do this. So just a saw wave, right? Or sine wave rather. You can see it's just, here's the fundamental. There's, it's like trying to have some harmonics here because it's probably not a perfect sine wave, but essentially you just have the fundamental and then nothing else, right? And then we'll do the saw 64, which is just a basic. And so here see the fundamental, and then kind of mirrors what you're seeing here over here. Not as evenly spaced or as pretty, but that is essentially what you're looking at here. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do either. I feel like there's a way to expand. This is what I was trying to do, and I can't remember right off the top of my head what it is. Ableton's very deep program. Even if you've been using it for years, if there, there's functions that you don't use all the time, it's really freaking hard to remember what you are looking for, or whatever. Oh, so we switch to square on that one. Go back to saw. See the saw. Saw 64. I think I had this square up when I was saying. Yeah. That also kind of looks like it, but there's more spacing. Sorry, I'm an idiot. Yeah. So here's what the sawtooth looks like. Again, it mirrors this pretty closely. You can see the obvious bands here, but yeah, and in either case, essentially what you are recreating there is what it looks like to when you have these in a stack, and it gets more complex as you go down the line. Okay, so let's go ahead and make this one sound. Right. Noise, modulate noise. I don't know, yeah, maybe. I mean, we can try it. Let's find out, because why not? I mean, we're not shooting for anything in particular here. My guess is that with the noise, modulating noise, it's already so there's like well, the tuning doesn't even do anything on these, but so there's something kind of subtle going on there, but it's not much. I think there's basically too much frequency information in the noise already to for the modulation to really produce any meaningful effect. Now, if we start on this oscillator with a sine wave, on the other hand, and start modulating it with noise, that can do some almost like interesting distortion / wave shaping effects. You can see now you get these effects like this, and eventually you just get like the tone with the noise. It's almost like it's overlaid, even though it's modulating it. It's the thing about FM is it's actually pretty easy to get noise we're most of the way to white noise with just two oscillators, two sine wave oscillators, one modulating the other at max volume, and the feedback set to 100. We're already at tonal, like white noise with a tonal element. It's probably some kind of brown noise or red noise, some kind of filtered noise, but and it still has a fundamental, so that's something. Like there's barely a fundamental to it, but there is. So yeah, you can definitely, FM, even with just two operators, can make a hell of a lot of noise. And, and then the other thing here, if we take this to all four oscillators sounding individually, right? Okay, so this one at 100% feedback. So that's almost a sawtooth right there with just a single. Let's turn it to saw 64, and now turn the feedback off. Pretty close. Actually, I'll tell you what, let's do feedback. Was it like 71, 79, something like that? Okay, so sine. So that's a saw. And then here we'll put an actual saw. Do the saw 64. Feedback set to 0. Okay, B. All right, let's set these both to 0. Turn B off. So that's pretty close. Okay, so that's a saw wave. And this is the sine feedbacking into itself at 79% as its only modulator. And that's pretty close, right? 73 maybe even gets it. Gosh, that's really close. So that's when you are learning FM synthesis, that's something it's worth keeping in the back of your head, right? Is that a single oscillator operator, same thing, right? Just remember if it's an operator, it also has an envelope and amplifier attached to it. But a single oscillator operator feeding back into itself at a roughly 73% essentially gives you a sine wave. I mean, sine wave feeding back at 73% versus its saw 64. There's a slight variation. It feels like there's like maybe one harmonic missing or something like that, or the relationship's just slightly off, but it's pretty dang close. And again, like wrapping your head around FM, from my point of view, a lot of it comes from just sort of understanding these. Even if you don't, like, okay, if you're working in a synth, you just have an FM synth. That's what you've got. And it is very, very useful to know that you can create a sawtooth wave with a single operator feeding back into itself at 73%, or because some synthesizers won't allow you to do that, the other thing you can do is get set that to 0, and I'm going to set all of these to 0 for now, and then let's switch to this one. Okay, so here we have these two are just outputting on their own, and this one, operator 3, or C, I should say, is being modulated by D. Okay, so D, C, D. Okay, B has that. Okay, so A is doing its feedback thing at 73%. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, nope. Let's do A. Will do the sawtooth wave. Let me turn that one off. Okay, and then let's get the envelope on here. Envelope. Turn the velocity off on these. Because again, I'm just trying to demonstrate different ways to get to the same point, which maybe is not all that interesting to you. I don't know. It's interesting to me, and I think it's really valuable to know because okay, so what's interesting is you can't actually quite get to the sawtooth wave if you don't have one of them feeding back at least a little bit. It's a little hollow. It's not quite right, but you can get this. So you can make it with a 2 oscillator stack with a little bit of feedback, or you can make it with a single oscillator just feeding back into itself. Still not quite there, but you can, I assure you, you can actually get there. Yeah, it is impressive. It's when you start playing with this stuff at a fundamental level, no pun intended, although it's a good one if I had intended it. It is interesting to see exactly how, yeah, like you say, how little of the fundamental has to be there before we perceive it as a fundamental, how few harmonics have to come in before we start recognizing it as a noticeably different sound. And I think that that's one of the things that with FM that messes with people sometimes is just that um, how subtle it really is sometimes. It feels like a lot of the times you don't even need most of what's going on with it because the I mean, you see there how little, like, again, it's one sine wave. Oh, actually, I think we have the sawtooth waves modulating each other here. So that's fun. But I mean, that's also another thing you can do. Let's put these back on sines. But I mean, that right there, these two sine waves, this one's barely modifying the other one. And what, we're halfway to the electric piano sound that everyone was so famous for them DX7 the original time around, so but yeah, so the key to getting comfortable with FM, in my mind, is getting comfortable with these 2 or 3 oscillator stacks. If you have a 6 operator synth, there will be an algorithm. It is usually number 5 if they are based on DX7, if I recall correctly. As many such synths are, because if you mirror the architecture of the DX7, you can load its patches, and there are millions and millions of DX7 patches. Maybe that's an exaggeration. Let's go with thousands and thousands of DX7 patches. Millions is definitely an exaggeration. But it might be, but let's not say it. Let's say there's thousands and thousands of DX7 patches out there available for free. So you don't really have to learn how to program shit if you don't want to. You can just play DX7 patches for the rest of your life. Okay, so let's do velocity 50% on this one. That's the carrier. That's operator 1. So as I'm getting to learn this a little bit, I think this is a pretty good interface. I really do. I think it could do a little better of a job of making it super plus like or obvious which operator you're using. Like if this window, for example, switched colors, so like when it's on operator 1, if it had a yellow tent or a yellow indicator here, and then had a blue or cyan indicator here, or cayenne, either way. And then here had the, cornflower indicator somewhere, and then the orange indicator if I was on this one. Like, that'd be pretty cool. I'm sure there's some Ableton designers watching this, so, hope you are taking that to heart. But yeah, so like for this one, for example, we could do something. So I added a little kind of a nice poly keys kind of sound here. LFO, do a sine wave. Just low. 8 hertz to 12. Let's see how. Okay, yeah, no, we want to hear. And we'll go to the here and say mod wheel to LFO amount 100. And yeah, I can lower this just a little bit. I'm actually going to turn the key tracking down a little bit, so I'm doing here. Yeah, I think it gets a little strident on the high end there, otherwise. I could probably also address that with some kind of sorry, I should probably finish a thought here. just with the aliasing tools and whatnot, and some of the other tools that it has is what I'm trying to spit out. But I got it. I got it. I got it figured out. Too much wobble. So I'm going to go in and add velocity, sensitivity back into all these, because remember I took it out. Yep, okay, add it here. Give it a little more dynamics, velocity to filter, frequency, amount, just a little bit. Kind of a basic poly key sound here, nothing particularly special. We can also, we can do aftertouch to, for example, filter morph. What? Filter, I think this one doesn't morph, so that's what the deal is. There we go. We'll speed up the LFO rate. No, that seems silly. Okay, so a little oscillator feedback. Yeah, something. Just use the controls you have. You want everything should be doing something, right? Let's go ahead and save this one. Poly keys. Not a particularly exciting sound, but a little brassy. Sounds. Playing a little duet with myself. Okay. Audio effects. So maybe it is worthwhile to take a instrument rack, put that in there. Oops. Let's undo that. Put the instrument rack. Nope. Can I? Oh, right. Okay. So I have actually not a ton messed with. I haven't done a lot of instrument racks, is what I'm trying to say. But I do know, for example, that you can take an instrument rack. So if you wanted to add effects to your synth sound, to your preset, if you will. Yeah, so you could do that. Let's see. Let's put in. No, not that. Not that. Modulators. That's what we want. No, pitch and modulation. Chorus ensemble. So let's add a little chorus. And now you could say the rack. Say the rack. Here. Show hide devices. Macro variations. Oh, here. Derp. Save preset. So here you could call this like FM keys complete because it's got a chorus on it. Okay, so we can go back to instruments, just go to operator, and back to the default. I don't know if you have any other suggestions, Mr. Swarm, of sounds that we could make? Maybe we could try and make a bass. Because that's a good thing to make. Let's make this. Alright, so I'm making some minor adjustments to the defaults here. We are on algorithm 1, which is one tall stack of operators. Right now we just have the second operator doing anything. Let's see, its envelope is very similar. Quicker decay down to this level. So this gets down there 1.3. Yep, this is about half as much time. That's fine, actually. And then we'll do this one. Yeah, and what you'll find as you do this, that it's not always terribly predictable what you're going to get. Different ratios with different operator configurations, etc. It can be a bit of an adventure finding out where everything is doing. You know what? Let's make this one really velocity sensitive, but set it pretty high. Yeah, there we go. 12 dB per octave. Turn the shaper onto the soft shaper. Maybe give it half a dB a drive. Hit the filter envelope. 12 seconds is way too many seconds on that delay or decay. Dreamy. I can't believe it's not a Juno. I mean, that's actually pretty easy. A dreamy long tail pad. Let's do, I mean, we can do a kind of a Juno style long tail pad. Sorry, let me save this real quick. It's kind of a little pluck. Little pluck, okay, and go into instruments, operator, okay. So here, let's do this because I am certain that we can get complex enough sound. I wonder, oops, not wrong. Kind of like the way that sounds. Yeah, okay, I kind of dig this. Destination, nope, don't want it to go to. Instead, we are going to have it go to the oscillator volume B. Okay, so volume B. All right, so set the frequency to velocity. Okay. I wonder if I can also... All right, so right now we have the LFO is modifying the oscillator volume of oscillator B to do like a to do some modifications here. Maybe it needs to be higher than that. So it's FMing this other one. I think maybe let's try one of these simpler saw waves. Gives it a little movement. Maybe we'll try. Let's see what that envelope looks like. Yeah. It's basically going to be same envelope as this. I mean, we can have it decay a little bit. You can also take a second for it to, our pads don't need to like flying in, karate kicking the shit out of everything. So let's just put make this envelope similarly. Let's see, what does this one take? 50 milliseconds to get open. This one takes 11. Make it take just a little longer. Oops. Oh, oops. I accidentally clicked a dumb button. Forgive me. Maybe we should just stick with some sine waves here. Getting into some interesting hollow. I don't know. Mod wheel. Definitely getting into the more into the territory here. Release. Probably better give these some significant release as well. Filter envelope. Release. Okay. Gotta turn that down a little bit. Give it just a little bit of drive. Be a little brighter, I think. I don't know how dreamy it is. It's kind of dreamy. It's pretty harsh and strident because it's FM, you know. We can turn that down. 50, 50, 50. Oops, nope, don't want to do that. Don't want to do that either. Keep accidentally clicking these fixed buttons. We could also, maybe we could try, maybe we don't even, oops, maybe just do a sine oscillator on that. I think it's definitely more interesting with the saw. Yeah, and I think this is definitely, like, when it comes to pads, a lot of times the effects make a big difference, you know. So, like, if we go to the chorus, and we could even try, chorus on there and maybe a little reverb. Like normally I would probably put the reverb on a send, but you know. Now you're getting into that ethereal range for sure. FM is, I mean, not to say that you can't do it. There was an artist not too long ago. Oh, I wish I could remember. I feel like it was someone noteworthy too. It wasn't just like some guy. But there was an artist who did a release that was literally only operator and echo were the only instruments on the whole thing, and effects on the whole thing, which is frankly incredible. And I'm sure it was an incredible amount of work to make all that, you know, to like make a full album. But anyway, my point was, the thing I was trying to say in the first place was, I would not, if someone said, "Hey, let's make an ethereal pad," FM is probably not the first place I would reach. You know, FM is good for those Nine Inch Nails, industrial, harsh ass sounds, and it is great for anything that you want glassy, digital, like lots of little weird dancing high harmonics, which, you know, that's another way to go ethereal, glassy and ethereal. I was, I guess, thinking more of a warm, spacey floating pad, but you know, there's different paths you can take to ethereal, obviously. Um, FM's good for those, you know, lately basses too, and all sorts of growling FM basses, dubstep basses. Um, but yeah, like an ethereal pad is not the first thing I would reach for, but you know, it is good to be able to use all of your tools to get where you're trying to go. Yeah. So I don't know if you have any more, or if anyone else, like I know, looks like there's a couple three here. Swarm and I tend to dominate the conversation. I apologize. I hope I didn't miss a comment from someone else. I'm scrolling through. It doesn't look like I did. But if anyone else had any questions or anything at the end, or obviously Swarm, if you have any more questions too, I just wanted to explicitly invite our lurkers to weigh in if they had anything that they wanted to share. Otherwise, I appreciate everyone hanging out and doing something a little different. I will definitely return to pigments. We'll do some more pigment stuff. It might be interesting too to do some stuff with pigments within the DAW, because we can route some audio into it and play with some of its stuff, you know, the vocoder and some of the new modal options can use external audio coming in, so we can like take a little sequence of something, either another synth or something we sampled, and run it through those engines for some fun effects. Might be something worth checking out. You can also check out at some point maybe some of the other Ableton's stuff, like Wavetable is very good, and the Drift is actually a shockingly good VA synth. Its analog synth is also totally fine, totally reasonable. Tension is its physical modeling synth. What is this? I can't remember. There's some. I also have some Max for Live devices that came in different packs. Impulse is their drum sampler synth thing. If you find it, please post that. Oh yeah, for sure. I'll try and remember who that was, and post a link to it. Maybe I can even Google it real quick. Yeah, who was that? Oh no, of course it's not going to be easy to find. Yeah, if I can figure that out, I will let you know. Gosh, I wish I could remember who. Oh, man. Huh. I'm not even sure how to start searching for it. I don't think it was Mono Lake. He's one of the guys who makes uh, Ableton. It's possible it was Mono Lake. I know he's really big into the Robert Henke is the guy's name. That is well, I found something I'm going to read. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to stop trying to find this and just wrap this up. But I will try and figure that out. If I do figure it out, I will absolutely post it on the socials. I'll also just maybe ask on social media. It's very possible that someone else. I'm not the only person that heard of this. It was when it came out. It was like, and I want to say this was like 4 or 5 years ago. When it came out, it was like briefly noteworthy. Like someone had made it. It got a little bit of press. Like, oh, this guy made a whole album with just Operator and Echo. Like, how cool is that? So it's out there. The information's out there. I just gotta uh, either figure out a way to track it down, or maybe hopefully if I put it on social media, someone else will just be like, "Oh yeah, that was such and such album by such and such guy. Here's a link to it," and then it'll be all done. Um, but yeah, so thanks for everyone that came and hung out. I know this was. Especially if you came on the first attempt and came back after I had to restart, then you are extra special, super cool in my book person. And if you tried to watch the first one and then bailed before I got it figured out, I totally understand. It'll go smoother next time. What can I say? Swarm, it's always it wouldn't be the same without you. Let's just say that. I'm glad you made it to this one. I will be streaming again on Wednesday morning. Is my next planned stream. I'll put some information up on it on social media, but it should be at 8:30 Mountain Daylight, or I'm sorry, Pacific Daylight Time. Oh crap! I think I might have put. Anyway, sorry. Pacific Daylight Time, 8:30 a.m. Here on the same channel, and I will. I'll either be doing some pigments or I'll be doing some more um, Ableton stuff. I probably will not go to Operator. If I do Ableton, it'll probably Wavetail or something like that. But you can let me know if you have a preference or whatever. And yeah, that I think that's pretty much going to be it for today. Again, just thanks for everyone for hanging out. I know this was a little different. It was probably a little rough in some ways. Definitely did not get as many sounds made nor as interesting sounds, but FM is kind of its own little monster, and it's requires a little bit more. It's a little less intuitive than some of the other methods are. So, in any case,